Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from DeltiasGaming.com, and in this video we're covering the Magic Dragonknight for 1 Tamriel, the latest patch in the Elder Scrolls Online. In this video I'm going to be covering a lot of in-depth skills, gear, champion points, and specifically going over the rotation, because it's not easy, but it sure is powerful. So if you're looking for detailed information for the Magic Dragonknight, PvE in 1 Tamriel, this is the video for you. Let's get started with Laceration. Okay, so what's really changed with the Magic Dragonknight is gear more so than skills for the 1 Tamriel patch. So I'm going to show you what I've come up with and what's best in the slot for what I do and what I run. So first off, the most important change is this Burning Spell Wave. You can find this in City of Ash 1 or 2. You can find it in normal or veteran, so it's really easy to acquire. Most days I recommend about 18,000 health or so, and then the rest into magic. That 18,000 health mark is really good to get to, especially if you're going to do trials in the harder versions of them. So think about even 1 health enchant if you're running a magic based race that doesn't have a health bonus. So the Burning Spell Wave 5-piece, when you deal flame damage, you have a 20% chance to apply the burning status effect to enemies and increase your spell damage 600 for 8 seconds. Now it has a lengthy cooldown of 12 seconds, but remember, when it procs is when the cooldown starts. So really you're only losing about 4 seconds off this ability before it comes back up. More flame damage and more effects that you have, the more likely you're to proc this sooner, getting that massive boost of spell damage. So then we also have our spell power potions, which I'll get to in the consumables, that will boost our spell power as well. So let's take one of these suckers and go kill a bear and see what our spell damage comes up to. And we're sitting at 3,100 spell damage. That's self-buff with a potion. Now that's obviously going to go higher with people in your group running Spell Power Cure, a Templar, using a Dawn's Wrath ability, and so forth. But that is a lot. So the unbuffed stats don't look very impressive, but once it's procced, it's nasty. Also, I go with the Thief Mundus Stone for more crit, reason being, magic builds don't have a bonus for wearing 7 pieces of light armor for spell crit. So it's really beneficial for us to use the Thief to get up in the 60s or higher than that. Also, I've switched a willpower jewelry for Infallible Aether. Reason being, the Minor Slayer will outperform the extra magic and spell damage that you get. So for PvE purposes, this is a really good piece of gear to have. Now, I don't have a 4-piece, so I'm using double Maelstrom Staffs, and there was a good reason for it. So the Maelstrom Staffs give you this nice little elemental wall, lighter heavy attack damage plus spell damage. The nice thing about it is if you cast your wall of elements on your back bar, then you bar swap, the effect that this gives you, the Maelstrom Staff gives you, will still be maintained. So you can still get the benefit from it. Why do I have another Maelstrom Staff on my front bar and not an Infallible Aether Staff? Reason being, you still get the spell damage from it. And you can enchant or use a potion and not get the enchantment since we have it on our back bar. This poison here, drain health from your target. Drain health, does damage, restores health, and does poison damage over time. So basically you're getting extra poison damage instead of running double enchants for free. And it gives you a lot of damage, especially when you're lighter heavy attack weaving. So this was a big damage increase that Gilliam the Rogue found out. And then last but certainly not least is good old Garathar. I think this thing is too powerful right now. It'll probably get a nerf. The nice thing about this is the 1-piece. It gives you max magicka, whereas Scoria gives you max health. So that little change right there is a big reason in Garathar's strength. Number 2, it's when you deal any damage. Any damage. So this thing is really likely to proc. 10% chance to create a lava pool doing flame damage to 8 meters every 1 second for 5 seconds with a 10-second cooldown. I'm telling you right now, this thing is always up. It's mean, it's lean. It really makes the Dragonknight that AoE juggernaut that we've been used to. How do you get this? This is in the Vaults of Madness dungeon that you can get. You can do it on a veteran, and you can do the hard mode challenge at the end and get a guaranteed helm. So you can see I pretty much have all best in slot gear within just a couple days of the patch. It's just much easier to get gear, so don't worry about it. If you don't have this gear, you can always go with a 5-piece Julianos. You can go with a 3-piece Willpower. You can go with a Scoria set or another 3-piece including the staffs to get some more magic out of your build. While we're on gear real quick, I want to talk about consumables before we move on to the skills. And you got to use spell power potions. Now, the only reason you wouldn't use something like this is if someone in your group had run igneous weapons. But oftentimes, even if someone is running igneous or molten weapons, it seems like they don't click it all the time. Also, these are more beneficial than the normal just trash pots because you see the magic generation is 28 seconds where this is 47. 45-second cooldown. It's really beneficial to constantly use these. It is expensive, but if you're looking for high performance, this is where it's at. Food I use is max health, max magic. Makes sense. You're going to see a huge DPS loss if you go for recovery. So how do I get around recovery? Very, very simple, and that's pretty much the skills. Okay, so as a Magic Dragon, I have 2 ways to get a flood of resources. One is Battle Roar, and that gives me a whole lot of magic based off my max magic. And number 2 is using a potion. The combination of using both of these things really helps me out for sustain. However, if you're doing a dungeon or a trial and you don't have a specific healer or another person running Elemental Drain, you should really think about doing it. Number 1, it gives you and other people around the magic return. Number 2, it gives spell resistance, which a lot of tanks don't run pierced armor for whatever reason. So you actually see a DPS increase here because of the spell resistance reduction on the mob. Some other skills that can help you out for sustainment, whether you're running a trial or a dungeon, is a lot of healers should be running Mystic Orbs now or Energy Orbs for trials. This is going to give you back magic for using the synergy. Another thing you're going to run, which is a little bit harder for healers to manage, is Force Siphon here morphed into Siphoning Spirit. So the combination of Orbs, Elemental Drain, Siphon Spirit, and then using a potion in Battle Roar can keep you topped off pretty easily. Okay, so the skills that I set my bar up around is my number 1 spammable ability, and that's Molten Whip. If we look at this ability, it does flame damage up front, and it gives you spell damage and weapon damage for ardent flame abilities that are slotted on your front bar. So it would make sense to slot some of these abilities. However, ground-based AoEs like Standard of Might can see the benefit of this spell damage once it's casted on your back bar and you bar swap. So that's why I have 2 ardent flame abilities, Flames of Oblivion and Standard of Might. Because once you bar swap, then you get the extra spell damage on the front bar. So I have my basic spell critical in my number 1 spot, and that's Inner Light. The reason I slot Inner Light up here is because of the Mage's Guild passes, giving me more magic, more recovery, etc. So I'm not going to really use it. I'm just going to leave it slotted there. Molten Whip is going to be our main spammable attack, but we're not going to be using it all the time because we do have so many dots to maintain. Damage over time effects, what are they? Well, Engulfing Flames. It's really not exactly the best damage dot, but what it does is it bumps up all of your flame damage. So it's really something you want to keep maintaining as a priority. 10 seconds, and it has a cone. So it's going to be AoE, it's useful, single target, it's useful. Now other DKs can run this as well, so you can flex this in or out depending if another DK is running it. Number 2 is good old Burning Embers with a 10.5 second duration. It costs almost nothing. The nice thing about this is it gives you a monster amount of heals for the damage inflicted. Essentially, if you're just holding block and keep on swiping this, you can pretty much heal to full over and over and over. Just realize it is single target, so you might have to apply it to 1 or 2 mobs if you're really needing a whole lot of healing. But it's mainly a single target, really powerful dot damage over time that has a nice heal at the end. Couple things else to know about this: reswipe it to get the heal instantly, and number 2, if the mob dies while this effect is up, it will heal you instantly as well. I have my main spammable AoE ability here, Elemental Ring. So it does magic damage, it does 6 meter AoE, and it does magic damage over time, or flame damage. The nice thing about this is if you kill enemies using this, you get magic. More magic than it actually costs. In fact, a lot more. So that becomes useful. So basically all my damage abilities, my dots mainly, are going to be up here in my spammable. Shooting Star, I'm not really going to use this at all. I'm just putting it here just for the extra Mages Guild passives. Elemental Storm, new destruction staff ability, and it's absolutely fantastic. I was wrong about this ability. It is incredibly powerful due to the range, due to the radius, and I don't even have it morphed yet. The downside is it's not going to be that effective on a Magic Dragonknight in comparison to our Standard of Might. The reason why is Standard of Might gives you increased damage done and reduced damage received. Now, it lasts a very, very long time, so for the same amount of ultimate, you're not going to get as big as Radius, but you're going to get more bang for your buck. So I still use Standard of Might as my primary ultimate. But if you haven't played around with the Destruction Staff ultimate in its current form, it is really powerful, and I was wrong about it. Alright, so our back bar is mainly our buff bar, and what we're going to be using is the same crit bonus here from Flames of Oblivion, but the nice thing about it is you can click this ability, it's going to launch a fireball, and you bar swap. It doesn't matter what bar you're on. So when we bar swap to our front bar for all of our main dots, it's still going to get the Ardent Flame damage. Number 2, Fighter's Guild ability, Rearming Trap. Seems a little odd running a stamina-based ability, but the thing about this is the minor force increasing your critical strike damage by 12%. It is truly powerful, especially with all these dots. The likelihood of our crits, in the 60-65 percentile range, making this optimal to maintain in single target fights. However, you can swap this ability in and out because you're not always going to be stationary. Some people don't know to leave, the mobs in this, like as a tank or so on. So it just depends on the content you run. So consider this flexible depending on what you're doing. Number 3 is a really underrated skill that I just love. Eruption. A 22 meter range. It's a small radius of 5 meters, but it still is AoE. The nice thing about this is it lasts 18 seconds, which is a very, very long time. So one cast of this ability can do a whole lot of damage. Not to mention the passes that you get. Mountain's Blessing, so it's going to give you ultimate back, and it's going to give minor brutality to you and your group. It's also going to give some stamina back as well when you cast it. So if you're in trouble, you can use that. Fourth ability up is really my flex spot. Now I have Draw Essence here, and that's mainly for just solo play, dinking around if I need self-heals. It's not our primary AoE ability. Reason being, it's not instant. You cast it and then it blows up after 2.5 seconds. But it does do a lot of healing. If you take the other morph, it can do interrupts. That's very, very useful in Veteran Maw of Lorcash, the Twins fight. So consider this a flex spot. Now, what would I flex in and out? Really, it just depends on the situation. There's a lot of good abilities. Elemental Drain, primarily when I'm running with someone that's not using it, or that's not using the taunt to reduce spell resistance. Also, for really hard content, vet hard mode trials, you're really going to need hardness magic. And it absorbs any type of damage anymore. So it's not just magic, and it's going to give you back magic depending on how much armor, light armor you're wearing. So consider this thing a must for most content. And VMA, if you're doing that sort of thing, it can be useful to have Dragonfire Scales or Flappers on there to reflect projectiles. You can also double bar Inner Light here for even more magic on your back bar as well, or you can even use Igneous Shields for another shield or an AoE shield. A lot of different options here, but consider Draw Essence your flex spot. Our number 1 damage producing ability typically is Elemental Blockade in long fights. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, something to know about this is actually the other morph, Unstable Wall, will produce more damage. The reason being, it lasts 6 seconds, has explosion at the end that actually explodes 3 times, not just once. So if you go test this cast for cast, Blockade will have a little less damage than Unstable Wall, single target, and especially AoE. The problem with it and why I recommend Blockade is it's 8 seconds. It's just a lot easier to manage. So for most players, you'll see a DPS loss with the other morph because it's 6 seconds, requiring you to do a massive amount of bar swaps. Just know that it is more damage, but Elemental Blockade is a lot easier to operate. Here's my little champion point chart here, highly sophisticated. 20 into Spell Erosion, 25 into Elfborn, 100 into Element Expert, and 42 into Thaumaturge. I go a full 100 into Magician, 87 to Arcanist, 70 and 70 split between Hardy and Elemental Defender, 30 into Sixin, and 17 into Quick Recovery. Though you can change these around. But I really like the 100 in Reduced Cost and the 87 into Arcanist for Sustain. Okay, so that's all fine and dandy. Now, how do we use this? Well, essentially, I'll start on my back bar. And what I like to do is hit Flames of Oblivion first, and charge up a fully charged heavy attack as the tank's pulling the specific mob. The reason why is these suckers can crit for almost 20,000, especially if you're using molten weapons. That's going to give you a nice bit of burst up front. So let's say this tree is the mob, and I'll go hit this guy in a second. Buff, fully charged heavy, then I apply Eruption right at the point of the mob. While I'm running up there and I hit Eruption, next thing I'm going to do is put my rearming trap if it's a stationary single target fight. Then I'm going to do Blockade and Bar Swap. So you can see Blockade's super long animation. That's the reason we let it be the last ability that we cast on this bar, because you can cancel it, saving time, saving damage by bar swapping. See? You can also block cast it, but that takes a little bit of practice. See? Click it, bar. Click it. So it's easier just to bar swap like that. So once again, on the back bar, use a spell power potion if you don't have your major buff up. Flames of Oblivion, fully charged heavy, Eruption down, trap, and you see how I'm light attacking in between every single action. You got to do that. It really adds up to a lot of DPS. So once we bar swap and we're kind of in melee range, next thing is up is Engulfing Flames. That's going to give us the nice bit of fire damage increase. And then I'm going to do Burning Embers. Burning Embers is a worthwhile dot maintaining, and it gives us a nice amount of heal. So then I go into priority DPS mode. So a couple things you need to know when you're deciding whether to cast a damage over time effect or not. What you have to realize is, will your damage over time effect outperform your single target spammable ability? So if one instant cast of Engulfing Flames does more damage over its full duration of Molten Whip, it's worth maintaining in a fight. The thing you need to ask yourself is the mob's health. So if you have a mob over here, let's say this troll guy, it's going to take me, 5-10 seconds to kill him. So during my second part of my rotation, you might not see the full duration of the dot. So that's determining whether or not you continue to recast it. Guys at 5% health, you're not going to go into full rotation mode. You're just going to spam whip. Same thing with AoE. There's 10 mobs around. It's useful using Engulfing Flame and Blockade. If they're just about dead, continue to use Elemental Ring. Okay, so let's do a simple, just little giant here and just kind of see it in motion. Then I'll slow it down and go over it in much more detail. So, Spell Power Potion, Oblivion, fully charged heavy, Eruption down, Blockade, Engulfing, and Whip. Yeah, he dies real quick. So once I do that, basically it's going to be about 2 to 3 whips before I need to go on my back bar. So once that's done, then I go into Blockade. If you do it right, basically you're going to get about 2 blockades out to every Flame of Oblivion. And then an Eruption, roughly the second Flames of Oblivion. So that's the best way to kind of think about it, is longer duration, short duration, and then halfway split. So once you get this down, that's the way it'll look like. And then Engulfing Flames and Burning Embers are roughly on the same time frame. So you're going to basically apply those roughly the same time. Now, the longer the fight goes, the weirder your dots get, just because you might have mechanics, you might have things going on. So don't always just apply Engulfing Flames next to Burning Embers. You need to make sure the dot's about to fall off for ideal DPS. But if you're on consoles, you don't have the buffs or you can't see them specifically, you might be better off just using them both. Now, something you want to do with your banner or standard of might, before you go ahead and apply it, make sure that your dots are applied first. I usually sometimes will drop my banner first and then apply my dots. You really want the dots to be up first to see the full benefit of this. Same thing with Warhorn. If you have all your players run their dots first, then blow Warhorn, then drop your banner, you're going to see a monster DPS increase. So I'm going to show you a true single target fight here and just self buff. So maintaining my own buffs and doing the rotation. Now it's kind of hard to watch this at first. So Flames of Oblivion, fully charged heavy. I'm going to do a Trap Beast here too. Engulfing Flames, Burning Embers, and then I go into priority mode. So I'm just whipping and dipping. Okay, now I'm going to freeze it here and explain what I'm looking at when I'm DPSing. So on the left-hand side, you have 1 and 1A. Essentially what this is an add-on called Buff Timers. It has a really nice kind of imagery and notification when buffs are running out. So these are self-buffs, or ground-based AoEs, Flames of Oblivion, Elemental Blockade, Eruption, and my Trap Beast or Minor Force. This is what I'm paying attention to determine whether I recast an ability or not. Obviously, consoles, you're not going to have this, and you're just going to have to rely on visual effects. But this is what I'm looking at. Number 2 is the debuffs on the boss. So that's Elemental Drain if I'm playing solo, Engulfing Flames, Burning Embers, and it will show Eruption, Banner, and a bunch of other effects. Number 3 is my potion. I'm trying to make sure that I'm always have a potion up and I'm using it on cooldown. But this is what I'm looking at when I'm DPSing to determine whether I apply a buff or not. So after my banners dropped, all my buffs are up, you can see a spike of damage. And now I go into priority whip and dip mode. So really what I'm trying to do is line up my Flames of Oblivion and Elemental Blockade. I really think Elemental Blockade is your priority DPS ability. So when that's down, you got to bar swap right away. As you can see right there, Flames of Oblivion, and it's lining up pretty good. Eruption's going to come off cooldown now, and just about the time I need to go back and apply my Elemental Blockade. So the thing that's really important is blockade. If you can't remember this, or you don't have the buff timers or whatever, just look on the ground for the big huge line of fire. That's your visual indicator to determine if you need to reapply the sucker or not. That will really help you out and increase your DPS. Blockade, blockade, blockade. And why do I say blockade? Because it's our second most damaging effect, which is pretty impressive. Now this is self-buff, so 31,000 single target DPS, so it'll go up a lot more if you're running a raid, running the appropriate buffs like Warhorn and so on and so forth. So you can see all my damage effects and where the damage comes from. Grothar down there, 7.7% of my single target DPS, and that will skyrocket in AoE. And the burning effect that Burning Spellwave provides, that's a lot of DPS, just 1,000 for having that 5-piece on. So it's a really good 5-piece as we see there. But what's at the top? Blockade. Our single spammable ability was up there, which is great because there's no movement speed. Otherwise, you'd see blockade usually in the number 1 position. But this is the DPS that you should be aiming for, where your blockade should be, and determining how much damage you're doing, and are you maintaining the appropriate amount of dots. So use this as a reference point. And now let's go half speed and see if we maintain all of our dots appropriately and where we can improve. So Flames of Oblivion, fully charged heavy to get that nice amount of burst up front, Eruption on the boss. I do Blockade, and then I do Trap Beast right before I swap. Grothar procs, Engulfing Flame for my increased flame damage, Burning Embers, and then I'm going to whip and dip. Now I put Elemental Drain on because I am playing solo, and then I drop my banner. Why? Because I want to drop it when all my dots are up. So you could wait to drop your banner until the Flames of Oblivion needs to be cast or blockade. That will give you a little bit better uptime, but I'm just maintaining. So I'm looking on the right for Engulfing Flames icon and the Burning Embers icon, then I'm looking on the left once my timers get down a little bit lower. It just so happens that Eruption and blockade line up pretty good. Same thing with Flames of Oblivion, so you're not having to bar swap to just maintain one dot over the other. When all the dots are maintained, there's nothing else to do. That's when you whip. So you're not going to be sitting there whipping a whole lot. Really, you're just maintaining the dots and whipping 2-3 times when your Engulfing Flame needs to be reapplied. Even as the boss starts to lower in health, I'm just maintaining my discipline and dots. So Engulfing Flame, Burning Embers. Then I'm going to go on my back bar. I need to recast Eruption, Blockade together. And then I got another 8 seconds before I need to do Flames of Oblivion, which is great because I can bar swap at 1 time, not 2. So then Potion comes off cooldown. I immediately use it. You can see it give me a flood of resources. Since the mob is getting close to dying, I'm going to do 1 Elemental Drain here. That way it should be able to get me topped off. Bar swap again. Blockade and Flames of Oblivion. Both are long animations, so just bar swap as fast as you can. I reapply Trap Beast to get some of that minor force for that last little bit of DPS. And this is the Dragonknight DPS. It's not exactly easy, but it takes a lot of time to get this down. So don't get frustrated if you can't do it right away. Alright, so we're going to do the first round of VMA, just kind of show you how this works in live action when you're taking pressure. You're probably going to have to change your build up a little bit to have reflective scales, but I kept it pretty much the same here. So I just slotted Deep Breath on my front bar for a heal.
Main thing I'm doing is casting Eruption and usually Trap Beast on one specific portal, and it can almost kill them unless they're super high HP. And then I do Burning Embers a lot over Engulfing Flames. The reason why I apply it early is so I can get a heal if the mob dies. So I do that a lot more, and I use Harness Magic as a self-defense. So I'm going to drop a banner, just let them eat it, and they're both going to die. So remember that Burning Embers requires a target. So sometimes you're going to need to use Harness Magic until you can get up close and do a Burning Embers on them. So Eruption on the portals and a blockade, and this thing is just going to die. Just leave it. When Garathar procs, it is nasty. Also, you can flex in Force Pulse and over your whip. It's going to be less damage, but a lot of times range is really helpful, as you can see, or you fully charge up a heavy attack. So right here, I'm going to hold block. I'm just going to do a couple swipes or a couple of Burning Embers, and you can see that heals me up to full. Keeping my Eruption on the portal, the primary DPS target, Engulfing Flames, Burning Embers, and once it gets low, I just leave him. He's going to die. At Garathar procs, and it is nasty AoE. Next round, Flames of Oblivion, Trap Beast. The Trap Beast does immobilization, which is really nice actually for a lot of these rounds if you're trying to get fast clears. So Garathar procs, and the AoE is just staggering. Now I don't know all the kill orders like some of these guys do, but I just kill stuff. So Burning Embers, fully charge heavy, and I do a dodge roll since I don't have Reflect on. And you can see how much healing that Burning Embers does. It is staggering. So make sure to use your potions on cooldown as well. And then go to the range caster guy, usually since the melee will follow you, and then bang. That's all I'm doing, is just staying disciplined in what I need to do. Elemental Blockade, you gotta realize it's not exactly useful unless you're doing it right on the portals, so they come out and they're pretty much dead. So if it's not down or you don't know where the portals are, be mobile. Boss round, let's see if we can't just burn this dude right away. So I'm going to apply my buffs first, then I'm going to get my banner up, and he's just going to eat it. And so the mob comes out and almost going to instantly die to this. I get pretty low here, so I just do a deep breath just for a real quick heal. Move Flames of Oblivion down, or Eruption, and I'm going to reapply my dots here and go into Whip Spam.
Well, gang, I hope this was helpful to you. One Tamriel is really bringing a comeback to Magic builds, specifically Magic Dragonknights. With all the gear and the Destruction Staff ulti, it looks really fun and powerful. So what's up next for me? I'm still farming some more gear on the battery, my Stamplar Harvester build, and I should have enough to kind of test out my Magic DK build in PvP. And then also I may do a Veteran Maelstrom Arena version with a run through, since you guys seem to like that sort of thing. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, share, and hopefully I can get a build or two out once a week. I'm here to open a whole lot of Undaunted keys. One Tamriel is out, and you can see these keys have been converted now to any key. So gold, silver, bronze, doesn't matter. And I have about 250 of these suckers we're going to try to open up and see if we get any good loot. But before we do that, I want to show you what exactly